To all parents and everyone watching, may we never raise a child who brings shame to our family name. This is a story of a young church girl named Sandra. She was 19 years old, innocent and pure. Her smile could brighten even the darkest room, and her voice was soft and sweet, like fresh water from the sky. Every Sunday, Sandra sang in church. She was 19. In church, whenever Sandra sang, the whole place became silent. Even the children stopped playing. She sang with her eyes closed, her hands lifted high like a tree reaching for the sky. People listening would begin to cry, some loudly, some quietly, but everyone was touched. Even old Mama Chinier, who never cried, once whispered, "This girl is special." Sandra never wore makeup. She dressed in long skirts that touched the ground like a humble queen. Her hair was always covered. She walked slowly, spoke gently, and smiled softly. She was never rude or noisy. When other girls joked about boys, she only smiled and looked away. Her father, Pastor Paul Adams, stood proudly in the pulpit and said, "Look at my daughter, proof that God still makes perfect girls." The whole church clapped. The old women prayed, "Lord, let my daughter grow up like Sandra." And the men would say, "Any man who marries her will have peace." Sandra read the Bible as if it were her personal diary. She didn't just know the verses, she understood them. Once, when her mother was sick, Sandra didn't rush to buy medicine. Instead, she knelt down and prayed, "Oh, God, heal my mother." By morning, her mother was well again. People believed Sandra was made from the hand of God himself. She got admission to university. People said Sandra was like she was made from heaven itself, a golden child, a shining light, a dove among crows. And they were right. But what no one knew was that even the brightest moon has a dark side. Sandra's own dark side was hidden, waiting quietly. When Sandra was accepted into university, the whole church celebrated with dancing. Her father said, "The Lord has done it again." Her mother sang with joy. They bought Sandra new clothes, a small gas cooker, a Bible with golden edges, and a phone for her studies. She left church. On the day Sandra left for school, Pastor Paul prayed a long prayer, placing his hand on her head like a crown. "Go and shine for God," he said. Sandra nodded, her eyes full of determination. She packed her Bible first, then her nightgown, and then the small white papers where she had written Bible verses. Her bag was filled with faith. At the university, her hostel room had 4 girls. Sandra shared with 3 others who were lively and flashy, like a city breeze, fast, loud, and colorful. Their names were Doris, Amanda, and Lola. They wore short dresses, long eyelashes, and strong perfumes that filled the air like rain in dry season. They laughed loudly, painted their faces, and often returned late at night, carrying bags of fried rice, chicken, and bottles that clinked as they laughed. Sandra, on the other hand, kept her corner neat. She pasted Bible verses near her bunk. One read, "Be not conformed to this world." Another said, "Flee from every appearance of evil." Every night, she knelt and prayed softly with her hands joined. Doris would roll her eyes and say, "Holy Mary has started again. God is watching." Amanda would sometimes whisper, "One day she'll join us." But Sandra only smiled. One night she said, "This life won't last. God is watching." Lola laughed and clapped her hands. "Our church girl has spoken. Clap for her." They mocked her, but Sandra never changed. She still read her Bible every morning. She still listened to gospel songs before class. She still called her parents every Sunday after church. Her voice was always calm and pure. "Daddy, today's message was powerful," she would say. "God bless you, my child," Pastor Paul always replied. Even when her roommates talked about the men they met and the money they received, Sandra paid no attention. She didn't envy them. Instead, she felt sorry for them. "Don't you want to enjoy life a little?" Amanda asked one evening. Sandra looked at her calmly and said, "I am enjoying life. God is enough for me." Her roommates rolled their eyes. "You'll get tired soon," Doris muttered. But Sandra, sometimes it slips. Sandra stayed focused. But she didn't realize that temptation doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes it enters quietly, like a soft wind, slow but dangerous. Everything seemed fine until one day it wasn't. Sandra sat on her hostel bed, holding her phone, waiting for a message, but no alert came. No call from home. She refreshed her banking app again. It showed only Nigerian Naira 050. Her throat went dry. She called her father. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. Later that evening, her mother finally sent a short message. "My dear, things are tight now. We will send money as soon as we can. Please manage." Sandra held the phone as if it were burning in her hands. Her chest felt heavy. She checked her food shelf. Only 1 cup of rice, half a small sachet of salt. No sugar, no milk, not even a biscuit. That night, she poured the last rice into a pot. As it cooked, her stomach growled like thunder. She sat by her bunk, eating it slowly, her eyes closed, lips trembling. Across the room, Doris laughed as she opened a steaming plate of fried rice and chicken. God will provide. Doris ate her fried rice and chicken. Amanda brought out suya from a nylon bag, and Lola danced around holding a bottle of juice. The smell filled the room like perfume. Sandra's stomach twisted again. She held her wrapper tightly to her chest and whispered, "God will provide." The next day, she went to her friend Grace. "Please, lend me some money." "I'll pay you back soon," Sandra begged. Grace nodded. "No problem. But this will be the last time, please." Sandra used the money carefully. She bought 1 pan of rice, some ground nuts, and 2 sachets of water. That was all. But by the third week, Sandra's rice was gone again. Her body felt weak, her steps became slow, and her eyes looked tired. At night, she couldn't sleep well. Her pillow was wet with tears. Still, she didn't call home. She didn't want to worry her parents. Instead, she knelt by her bed and prayed, "Father, please open a door for me." But what opened wasn't a door she expected. That evening, the room was bright with music playing softly. The girls were dressing up again, laughter filling the air like perfume. Doris danced in front of the mirror, holding a glittering gold dress. Then she dropped it on Sandra's bed. "Wear it just one night. You'll eat, you'll laugh. No one will touch you. Just look pretty." Sandra stared at the dress. It sparkled like stars. She shook her head slowly. "No, I'm not like that." Doris shrugged. "Suit yourself, church girl." They went on dressing like movie stars. Amanda slipped on red heels. Lola sprayed perfume that smelled like sweet flowers. Then they left, their heels clicking down the corridor. The room grew quiet. The room went quiet. The room was silent. Sandra sat alone under a flickering light bulb. She picked up her cracked phone. Its battery was low, and there was no airtime. Her bank account still showed only 50 kobo. Her sanitary pads were finished, so she had folded tissue inside her underwear. Her lips were dry. Her stomach made noise. She turned her eyes to the dress again. It was still lying there, waiting. Sandra stood up, touched the soft fabric, and held it close. Then she whispered, "Only this once." Just then, Doris returned to grab her forgotten lipstick. She saw Sandra holding the dress and grinned like a cat. "I knew you'd join," she said. "The girl in the mirror." Before Sandra could change her mind, Amanda pulled her to a chair. "Let's curl your hair," she said. Lola opened her makeup bag with a smile. "Don't move. We'll make you look like fire." They worked quickly, brushes, powders, lipstick, perfume. Sandra sat still like a statue, her heart racing. When they finished, they turned the mirror toward her. Sandra blinked. The girl staring back had red lips, shiny eyelids, and glowing skin. The gold dress hugged her body as if it had been made just for her. She didn't look like Pastor Paul's daughter anymore. Doris leaned close and whispered, "You look dangerous." Sandra didn't smile. She didn't speak. She just stared. The girl in the mirror was a stranger, and that stranger was ready to step into a world Sandra had only judged, never touched. By 9:30 that night, a black car arrived, long and sleek. The black car was shiny with dark windows. The driver said nothing. Soft music played inside, like whispers. Doris, Amanda, Lola, and Sandra entered the car like queens. Sandra sat quietly at the edge, clutching her small purse like a shield. Her hands trembled slightly. Doris handed her a slim glass. "Just sip. It helps you smile." Sandra took a small sip. It tasted sweet, but burned her throat. She coughed, then forced a small smile. The car stopped in front of a big club. Bright lights flashed outside like stars fighting for space. Inside, everything was wild. Loud music, smoke in the air, people laughing, girls dancing, men staring. Doris held Sandra's hand. "Don't be scared. You're safe." They walked past a crowd, through a golden rope, into a quieter section with soft chairs and cold drinks. One man stood as they arrived. He was older, with a neat beard, a shining wristwatch, and perfume that reached Sandra before his words did. "So, you're the pastor's daughter," he said slowly, his voice calm. Too calm, like he had done this many times. Sandra gave a shy smile. "This is Philip," Doris said. They all sat down. Philip poured Sandra a drink and began talking, asking where she studied, what she liked. He watched her closely, as if she were glass that might break. Sandra laughed at jokes she didn't find funny. She ate food she couldn't even pronounce. She danced a little. When she grew tired, Philip held her by the waist and whispered, "Let me take you somewhere quiet." They left the club. The hotel room. The hotel room was cold. Too cold. Sandra stood in the middle, her eyes wide. The bed was large, the lights dim. Her feet refused to move. "I'll take care of you," Philip said as he walked closer. "You're safe with me." Sandra glanced at the door. Her phone was dead. She had no transport money, no airtime, no one to call. She felt trapped. Philip reached for her waist. She flinched. He smiled softly. "Relax," he said, but his eyes were sharp and his hands steady. Inside her chest, her mother's voice echoed like thunder. "The devil gives with one hand and takes more with the other." Sandra blinked back tears. This was the price, and she didn't know how to say no. After that night, Sandra didn't cry. She didn't talk about it. She simply washed her face the next morning, Sandra washed her face, wore her church dress, and went to class like nothing had happened. Her roommates looked at her and smiled. "She's one of us now," Doris said with a wink, and it was true. The next Friday, they went out again, and again the following week. Sandra was no longer the quiet girl sitting in the corner. She now stood in front of the mirror, rubbing cream on her legs. She sprayed perfume that made boys turn their heads twice. Her dresses grew shorter. Her lips stayed red. Her walk became slower, like a cat with a secret. Sandra had become two girls in one body. In the morning, the same old Sandra. In the mornings, Sandra still looked like the same old church girl. Bible in hand, long skirts, eyes closed in worship. Her voice was still soft, her prayers still deep. She still joined the campus fellowship, still sat in the front row, still shouted hallelujah. But when the sun went down, another Sandra came out. Her lips were painted red, like ripe tomatoes. She wore wigs in many colors, blue, gold, black, red, pink. Her shoes clicked loudly like a marching band. Her clothes fit tightly, hiding secrets. She no longer waited for Doris to invite her out. Now, Sandra was the one who dressed up first, sometimes even choosing which club they would go to. "I heard tonight's one is in Lecky. Let's go there," she would say, tying her lace heels. Doris looked at her with surprise. Amanda nodded with respect. Lola whispered, "This girl has changed." Sandra didn't need help anymore. This girl has changed. Sandra didn't need help anymore. She now owned perfumes her mother had never bought, 2 phones, one for school, one for business, dollars in her purse, gold earrings, and designer bags. She no longer asked her parents for money, and that made them proud. Her father asked, "You're doing fine?" "Yes, Daddy." "God is good," she answered. Her mother asked, "You're not lacking?" "No, Mommy. I'm even helping others." And they believed her. because Sandra had always been that child, the obedient one, the pure one. So they didn't ask more questions. They didn't notice the small cracks, how her voice had changed, how her replies had grown shorter. But of course, who would suspect? Who would suspect a girl who still quoted Psalms? Who would question a daughter who still prayed in tongues? Nobody. Not her lecturers, not her neighbors, not even her closest friend, Grace, and certainly not her parents. And that was their mistake. Because even when Sandra came home for the holidays, she knew how to act. She wore long skirts, no makeup, her hair tied neatly in a bun. She woke up early for morning devotions, even before anyone else. She quoted Bible verses with ease and even taught the children's Bible class. Her parents were proud. Her father would nod and say, "In church, this girl is going straight to heaven," her father would say proudly. Her mother would whisper, "You're better than I was at your age." In church, Sandra was a star, a shining light, a flower that never seemed to fade. She taught memory verses to children. She sat beside her father in the front row. During worship, she would close her eyes, lift her hands, and cry. People followed her into deep worship, like sheep following a shepherd. Everyone loved her. Everyone trusted her. But once she returned to campus, the other Sandra came alive. And it was addictive. The freedom, the attention, the money, and most of all, the power. Men gave her anything she wanted. Phones, dollars, weekend trips. She no longer needed to pretend. At least not until school ended. But on the day she submitted her final project, a strange fear gripped her. Home, where her father prayed like thunder. Home, where her mother woke at 5 a.m. to sing worship. Home, where there were no short dresses, no loud music, no hotel rooms with soft pillows, no men calling her sweetheart, no cash raining down on the table. The next day, still, Sandra packed her things and entered the bus home. When she arrived, Pastor Paul hugged her tightly. "Welcome, my jewel. God has spoken. You will now work in the ministry full-time. The youth need your fire." Sandra forced a smile. "Yes, Daddy." The next day, she wore her long skirt. She led morning devotion. She read the Bible with power. People clapped. Some even cried. The elders said, "This one is born for ministry." In the mornings, she worked in the church office. In the evenings, she led choir rehearsals. But at night, when everyone was asleep, Sandra changed. Behind her Bible, she hid her makeup. Behind her prayer robe, she tucked away her red dress. She tiptoed past her parents' room and slipped into the night, like a rat that knows where to find food. And the streets welcomed her like a lost daughter. Men still called, some new, some old. They liked that she was now the pastor's daughter from the city. They paid more. They gave her anything, phones, shoes, even secret flights. By morning, Sandra returned home before the rooster crowed. She washed her face with cold water, erased every trace of night, and once again stood behind the pulpit. Clean, calm, holy. Nobody knew. Not her father. Not her mother. Not even the people who knelt while she led prayers. But she knew, and every time she lifted her, the next Sunday, when Sandra lifted her hands to sing, they shook just a little. The church, which once felt like her safe place, had now become her hunting ground. Every Sunday, Sandra stood in front, leading worship. Her voice still touched hearts. Her hand still rose like a dove in flight. But something was different. Not in her, but in the way men looked at her. Married men, elders with gray hair, ushers holding their Bibles. They stared too long. They smiled too wide. Their eyes no longer stayed on her face. The first was Brother Felix. He always sat in the third row beside his wife and two daughters. His suit was neat, his Bible filled with underlined verses, and his amen was always the loudest. After a youth service, he walked up to Sandra. "You're truly anointed," he said, holding her hand longer than normal. She smiled politely. "Thank you, sir." The next Sunday, he slipped a white envelope into her hand. "For lunch," he whispered. Sandra blinked. "Sir, just take it. A small gift for a daughter Zion." She took it. Inside was $50,000. 2 days later, a message came. Brother Felix sent her a message. God put it in my heart to check on you. You look tired today. Are you okay? She didn't reply. Later that evening, another message came. My wife traveled. Come by after choir practice. We can pray together. Sandra hesitated, then typed back, okay? That Friday, she wore her longest skirt and carried her Bible. She told her mother, I'm going to Brother Felix's house. He wants us to pray. Her mother smiled. You're such a responsible child. After the welcome juice. But Sandra hadn't gone there to pray. In his sitting room, after the juice and short Bible reading, Brother Felix's hands moved to her waist. Sandra didn't stop him, and what followed was neither quiet nor holy. That night, she left his house with perfume in her bag and money tucked inside her Bible. The girl who once trembled at night now carried sin on her body like an extra skin, comfortable with it, even in daylight, even inside church. After Brother Felix, there was Elder Daniel. He was quiet, always dressed in white, and sat near the front, a rich widower, respected by everyone. People called him the pillar of the church. He rarely smiled, but whenever he looked at Sandra, there was a flicker in his eyes. One Sunday after the service, he stopped her near the church gate. Young lady, God is with you. Thank you, sir, she replied. That evening, her phone buzzed, an alert. Elder Daniel had sent 200,000 naira. A message followed. If you ever need peace, my house is calm. No noise, no stress. Sandra stared at her phone, her fingers suddenly cold. The next day, she told her parents, I'll be at Elder Daniel's house. We want to pray for the youth outreach. Her mother hugged her warmly. You're always working for God. We're proud of you. Sandra smiled back, but it was a heavy smile, like someone carrying a pot on their head. At Elder Daniel's house, there was no prayer. At Elder Daniel's house, there was no prayer, only soft music, warm food, and his hand slowly reaching for hers. She didn't stop him. She didn't say no. Then came Pastor Jerry, young, handsome, the assistant pastor, full of fire on the pulpit. Everyone admired him. One Tuesday afternoon, he called her. Let's have a private session, he said. Just you and me to pray and plan. She agreed. That week, she went to his office. It smelled of menthol and fresh books. He softly locked the door. They sat down. He opened his Bible and read a verse about purity and purpose. Then he prayed. He placed his hands. The prayer changed. Pastor Jerry placed his hand on her head. Sandra closed her eyes. But soon the prayer changed. His hand moved from her head to her shoulders, then slowly down her back. She opened her eyes. Don't be afraid, he said. This is spiritual covering. Then he hugged her. Too long, too close, too warm. And she didn't pull away. Not that day, not the next. That night, a text came. You are special. God wants to use you, but only in the hands of the right shepherd. Sandra didn't reply. She didn't need to. By now, the men came to her on their own. They brought money, perfume, dollars, gifts, and she gave them only silence. Not yes, not no, just quiet eyes and soft smiles. Her parents noticed nothing. They still believed their daughter was safe in God's hands. Sandra's life became soft, too soft, like cake left in the sun. She now had 3 phones, none from home. One for church, one for men, and one for silence. Her shoes came from Dubai, her wigs from London, her bags from stores her mother couldn't even pronounce. Dollars under her bed, wrapped in old cloth. Her bank account kept growing. Whenever she left the house, she told her parents, I'm going for mountain fasting. They believed her. Other times, she said, a sister needs deep prayer. I'll be with her for 3 days. Her mother smiled. You're such a good girl. Her father laid a hand on her shoulder. One day, you'll take over my ministry. I can see it clearly. Sandra nodded, but her throat felt tight. They didn't notice the new phone. They didn't question the perfumes or the lace dress that cost more than her mother's monthly salary. They didn't ask why she was always tired. Maybe they didn't see the lies. Or maybe they didn't want to. Still, Sandra sang in church like before. Sandra led the youth with passion. Her voice was full of fire, and people followed her. But at night, when she closed her door and wiped off her makeup, she sat on her bed, staring into the mirror. She cried, not loudly, just soft, quiet tears. Her chest felt heavy like a stone, her throat dry like sand, her hands trembling. "God, are you still there?" she whispered. But there was no reply. Only the ceiling fan spun above her, pushing air that could not cool her guilt. Deep inside, she knew her blessings weren't from heaven. They came from men's pockets. And every pocket left her emptier, taking a piece of her soul. One morning, Sandra woke up. Sandra woke with a sharp pain in her stomach. She ran to the bathroom and vomited. Her hands gripped the sink. Her head burned. Her knees shook like dry leaves in the wind. Her mother knocked gently. "Sandra, are you okay?" Sandra wiped her mouth. "It's just malaria, Mommy. I'll be fine." But the days passed, and she kept throwing up, again and again. Her clothes no longer fit. Her waist refused to stay flat. Her mother began to notice. One afternoon, while folding Sandra's bedsheet, she found something hidden under the mattress. A small test strip. Fresh, still wet. Her eyes widened. 2 lines. She rushed back to the room. "Sandra," she said softly, "what is this?" Sandra froze. Her lips shook. Her hands fell to her sides. She didn't speak. Not yet. Her mother sat beside her. "Talk to me." "Who?" "Not yet. Who did this to you?" her mother asked. Sandra stared at the wall. Her heart beat fast, like drums at a village festival. Then her voice broke. "It started in school, Mommy, when you stopped coming. I was hungry. I followed them once. Just once." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "I tried to stop, but they kept coming. Brother Felix, Elder Daniel, Pastor Jerry." She whispered the names. Names from church. Men with holy hands but dirty hearts. Tears poured down Sandra's face, like rain filling a stream. "I don't even know who got me pregnant. I don't know who to blame." Her mother cried. She covered her mouth with her wrapper and wept like a woman who had lost her child, even though her child sat beside her. But she didn't scream. She didn't shout. She just pulled Sandra close and whispered, "Your father must not know. Not yet. Please, not yet." And that was how the biggest secret in the house began to grow. In silence, Sandra's mother bought gowns. Big ones, loose ones, clothes that covered her belly the way a sack hides beans. Sandra stopped going out much. She stayed in her room, prayed softly, ate carefully, walked slowly. Her mother watched her every move, every step, every bite, every sound. They whispered in the kitchen, prayed in corners, made quiet plans. "Nobody must know," her mother kept saying. "Not yet, just until we figure it out." But secrets don't stay hidden forever. One Sunday morning, the sun rose bright and clear. The church was full. The choir stood ready. Pastor Paul was smiling. His daughter would lead worship again. Sandra wore a long gown. She tied her scarf tight. She stepped forward with the microphone in her hand. The choir behind her. She closed her eyes, lifted her hands, and began to sing. But halfway through, Sandra made it to the first verse. Then her knees gave way. She stumbled and collapsed. The church gasped, loud and sudden, like thunder after lightning. People rushed to help her. As she fell, her blouse shifted. Her belly showed, round, no longer flat, no longer hidden. Whispers spread to the pews like rats running in the dark. "Is she pregnant?" "How?" "She's the pastor's daughter." "No, it's not true. It can't be." Sandra opened her eyes slowly. Her vision was blurred. She heard broken words around her. "Sandra, pregnant, shame, disgrace." They carried her out. Pastor Paul leapt from his seat. "What's happening?" His wife grabbed his arm tightly. "Let's go home. I'll explain." But it was too late. The fire had already started, and the wind was spreading it fast. That evening, the church was silent, like a graveyard. No drums, No clapping. No hallelujah. Only heavy hearts and slow footsteps. The chairs were arranged in a circle. Elders, deacons, pastors, ushers, and members sat waiting, whispering. Pastor Paul stood in front, his hands shaking, his Bible pressed tightly to his chest. His wife sat beside him, her face pale, scarf pulled low. Sandra sat alone, head bent, hands clasped, her gown stretched over the small rise of her belly. Pastor Paul cleared his throat. His voice was low, weak, like a candle about to go out. Sandra, is it true? She lifted her head slowly and nodded. Yes. His lips trembled, his eyes filled with tears. Who was responsible? Silence. Sandra looked up. Her face was tired, her voice steady. I don't know, she said. It could be anyone. I've been with many. Gasps cut through the air. Heads turned. Someone whispered, What did she just say? Sandra's lips kept moving. She started calling names, one after another. Elder Daniel. Gasps filled the room. All eyes turned to him. His hands trembled. Brother Felix. His wife covered her mouth and screamed. Pastor Jerry. He stood up quickly, head down, coat swinging as he walked out without a word. She continued. More names. More respected men. Men who had once laid holy hands on her at the altar. Men who shouted fire on Sundays. The church broke. Women cried. Some fainted. The men stayed silent, faces pale, eyes on the floor. A few slipped out quietly. Others sat frozen in their seats. Pastor Paul did not move. His knees shook. His Bible slipped from his hands and fell to the ground. Pastor Paul's Bible slipped from his hands and fell to the floor. He sat down slowly, speechless, empty, broken. The daughter he once called the light of the family had now become the storm that destroyed his name. Sandra had been the example the girl mothers wanted their daughters to be like. Now she was the warning. Don't be like her, they whispered. She's the one who fell. She's the one who brought shame to the pulpit. Her photos were taken down from the church walls. The choir quickly found a new lead singer. Pastor Paul stopped preaching. For weeks, he sat quietly in the front row, like a visitor in his own church. Eyes on the ground, lips sealed. Sandra's mother no longer smiled. She stopped attending women's meetings. She no longer walked with pride in the market. Everywhere she went, she felt the stares. She heard the whispers. Sandra stayed inside the house. Curtains drawn. Bible closed. Sandra stayed home. The Bible beside her bed gathered dust. Her belly grew quietly, day after day, like a balloon that refused to burst. Most times she sat alone, hugging her knees, staring at the ceiling. The same hands that once lifted high in worship now only hid her face in shame. The same voice that once shook the church now whispered only to the walls. And every night, as the moon peered through her window, Sandra repeated the same words like a broken record. If only they knew what I did after church. But now they knew, and that knowing had changed everything.